Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS channel. Today we are going to cover the environment current affairs that have been important in the last week. So starting with the first issue, and that is Sundarbans is under the threat of microplastics. Okay, this is something that combines two of the things when we talk about. One thing is Sundarbans meaning that we are talking about the biodiversity. Okay, biodiversity and the different types of ecosystem that Sundarbans could carry. Also, we are relating it with environmental degradation. Environmental degradation. Okay. So what has been observed that you can see that Sundarbans is an area which will have a lot of mangroves. Okay, what are mangroves? Mangroves are something that are found between the ecotone, that is between the terrestrial as well as the aquatic ecosystem. So Sundarbans carrying this mangroves is under microplastic threat. You can see from this picture that the plastics have tied them onto the plant itself. Okay, so why it is in news? The first reason is that there has been a study by IISER, that is Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Kolkata. So what it has found, it's found that microplastics are actually disrupting the food web and the carbon cycle in the Sundarbans. We'll see it how. How does this mechanism work? We already know that carbon is an important nutrient. When we talk about carbon cycle, two types of carbon cycles are there. One is the short-term cycle, the other is the long-term cycle. So when we talk about carbon cycle, it is basically a derivation of the microplastics itself. And food web, when we talk about food web, we are talking about the energy transmission. We are also talking about an important concept in ecology and environment, and that is your biomagnification as well as bioaccumulation, right? So let us see further. The core insight is that there is a threat to the blue carbon efficiency of mangroves and the ecosystem is becoming less blue. Okay, now it is important for us to understand what is less blue. When we talk about blue carbon, we are basically talking about the carbon cycle present, okay, that is present naturally in the waters, in the oceans, okay, in the rivers. So all of that is blue carbon. When we talk about less blue carbon, we are saying that this carbon is something that has been derived not out of the natural consequences, but because of some anthropogenic activities like the presence of microplastics. Okay. So moving forward, what are the key findings of this study by IISER in Kolkata? So we see this. Key findings of the study. One, the pollution levels. The pollution levels that there is high microplastics in Muriganga estuary. That means estuary, essentially, it can be classified as a wetland. And wetlands are very, very important when we consider about the Ramsar Convention. Ramsar Convention, of which India is also a part of, and it started in 1971. So high microplastics in density, you will find microplastics there. So 40% has increased. There has been a 40% increase during the monsoon. Okay. What are the sources? So the sources of such kind of microplastic pollution, mainly the findings of the study will state that it has been due to the fibers, the textiles, okay, the fragments of the weathered plastics, and materials which are there are polypropylene and polyethylene terephthalate, PET. It is the same PET bottle that we use to drink carbonated drinks. Okay, for example, the Coca-Cola bottle, all of that will have this PET bottle. Okay. However, it is recyclable. When it is recyclable, it is only recyclable when it is through a proper disposal channel. If it does not happen through a proper disposal channel, what happens is that it ends up in landfill or it ends up in the oceans, and through oceans it further gets on disintegrating, and therefore it converts itself into microplastics, affecting the ecosystem as a whole. Okay. Now there is platysphere formation. This is a very important word, platysphere, plastisphere formation. What it means is that usually you will find that microplastics are a great accumulator of pollutants. Okay, even you would have heard about the persistent organic pollutant. So the pollutants actually accumulate on the small sized particles or the microplastics, right? Now what is happening is this is becoming a plastisphere, which means that even the microbes are now utilizing that microplastic particle as a substrate and getting accumulated upon, making it much more dangerous and poisonous. So you have plastics crack, it hosts microbes and it results in a plastisphere. Here you can see that how specifically when we talk about this is a mangrove, that means you will have a waterlogged land. Therefore, the roots are being exposed to the microplastics, and they are affecting both biodiversity, aquatic biodiversity, as well as the roots of the mangroves, the plants species that are present in the mangrove ecosystem. Now, carbon cycle disruption. So we said that there are two types of disruption that is happening. One is at the level of how the carbon cycle is being disrupted. One thing is that carbon cycle, we have said that there is short-term cycle, there is long-term cycle. So when we talk about carbon cycle being disrupted, one, plastic has become the new carbon source. Okay, earlier the carbon cycle would mostly be from the atmosphere. Okay, it would be from the organic materials, it could be from the oceans itself. Okay, that is, you may have coral reefs also. All of these become a source of carbon, and therefore carbon cycle is something that is driven mostly by the microorganisms or atmosphere, hydrosphere or biosphere or lithosphere, right? But plastic something that is synthetic in nature. Synthetic meaning it is man-made. It is man-made, and because of this you will find that this has now replaced, or it has become much more dominant as a carbon source when we talk about it being present in the carbon cycle of the oceans. Okay, so 90% of the carbon is being sourced from plastics itself. Okay, you have read about the carbon cycle. This is the source of carbon that is being cycled. So the problem here is that they release dissolved organic carbon. Dissolved organic carbon. This becomes a ailment for the carbon cycle. That means the carbon cycle ultimately becomes disrupted because of addition of a huge amount of carbon present in this. Okay. Then effect on ecosystem. DOC. This DOC, that means the dissolved organic carbon. This is something that helps in bacterial growth. Bacterial growth is particularly because of the more amount of decomposition requirement. Okay, decomposition is required, and therefore it will host the bacteria more, right? So this dissolved oxygen will increase the bacterial growth, and you will have artificial microbial bloom. Whenever we try to assess whether water has been degraded or the water body has been polluted or not, we try to assess what is the dissolved oxygen content within it. And any type of bloom of such kind of population, increase in population will definitely decrease the amount of dissolved oxygen and thereby increase the amount of demand. Okay, outcome, there is altered food web. Okay, that means the animals, the biodiversity that are present, they are utilizing other sources as a source of their nutrients. Accelerated carbon cycling, because you will have more amount of carbon that is being fed into the carbon cycle. Third, additional biogenic carbon production. That means even with respect to the living organisms, there will be more amount of carbon production because the supply has been increased and the dominant source has been your plastics itself. So big impact, mangroves will lose efficiency as carbon sinks. Okay, mangroves are known to be huge carbon sinks. Okay, because they store the carbon within their biomass as well as within the soil itself. Okay, both of these mechanisms can happen, and these are mainly your anaerobic conditions in which the mangroves thrive. So this carbon sink is something that is getting deteriorated, and this efficiency of storing carbon is also getting depleted. This is also getting depleted. Okay, now just to understand all of this, let us also see what do we understand by microplastics. Okay, microplastics, this is something that has been asked also in your previous year questions. So we must be very clear about the size classification. When we say microplastics, we mean that plastic which has size of less than 5 millimeter. Okay, we have another term that is called as nanoplastics. Nanoplastic means it is less than 1 micrometer. Okay, so be very specific about the classification based upon the size of the plastic. Primary or secondary microplastics are also there. Primary and secondary microplastics, the concept is that that when you have primary microplastics, it has been made as such. That means the industrial applications require the microplastics to exist in such a size. Okay, that is your primary microplastics. Secondary microplastics, however, occur after a process is there. Okay, that secondary microplastics, for example, if there is a PET bottle that has been there, through heat, through stress, through increase in temperature, through various kinds of effects, it will get disintegrated over a period of time, and then when it reduces to this size, then we say this is a secondary microplastic. Okay, so you can see the types. Primary, you have microbeads, microfibers. You'll find microbeads particularly in the sunscreens, in the cosmetic products. Okay, secondary microplastics, it is the breakdown of larger plastics. So we can see how it breaks down. Larger plastic products, this is your PET bottle. Okay, that means there is wave action, there is UV. Clothing, fibers will disintegrate and form into microplastics. Noodles, okay, they are small plastic pellets that are used in the industry. They are also causing microplastics. And micro beads, as we have discussed before, personal hygiene products, toothpaste, shower gel, face wash, all of these things can convert, and these have the micro beads that can contribute to the increase in microplastic load in the water body. Okay. Now you have environmental impact. One is bioaccumulation and biomagnification. What do we mean by bioaccumulation and biomagnification? We basically mean that the organism will start storing this kind of a pollutant within its fat layers. Okay, had it been soluble in the water, then it would have been excreted out by the organism. But since these pollutants form storage in the fat layers of the organisms, therefore you will find bioaccumulation, and magnification will occur as the food chain proceeds. That means the top or the apex predator will be the one that is going to be much more poisoned because of the accumulation of huge quantity of pollutant as the levels increase. Then you will have digestive blockage. Digestive blockage in organisms, that means the organisms will ingest these plastics, and therefore there will be a creation of a barrier when the other kind of food is being ingested. Trojan horse effect. Trojan horse effect. Plastics absorb toxins, heavy metals, and persistent organic pollutants. Okay, they transfer the toxins into the food chain. So what we are talking about here is that basically they act as a surface for the pollutants to also accumulate upon. Okay, the plastics, microplastics, they are also a kind of a pollutant. Okay, they are a kind of a pollutant, but they also serve as a surface for other types of pollutants to accumulate on it and increase in concentration. Once they are ingested, it becomes a threat to the aquatic biodiversity. Next, let us know about the Sundarbans also. So, what is the location? So, you can see this is the mangrove. This is a picture of a mangrove from the Sundarbans itself. Okay, you could see the mangroves, how they have adapted to this kind of a fluctuating saline environment. That means there are certain types of fruits that are coming out of the stems of the plants also, trees also, right? So first, what is the location? Please be very sure. Please, try to see it on the map atlas. That is, it is at the delta of Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna. This is the delta, and it is spread across India and Bangladesh, right? So if a question comes and says that Sundarbans is only limited to India, you will have to say it is a wrong statement. Ecological importance, largest mangrove ecosystem. Okay, so this can also become a question this year because Sundarbans has been in news previously also. Okay, so it is the largest mangrove ecosystem. It is a major blue carbon sink, and it is a natural shield against cyclones. Okay, there is something known as nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions basically imply that we can utilize whatever resources are present in the nature by themselves. We can utilize them to have certain types of ecosystem services for us. Okay, and this will not require a huge amount of capital investments because these are relatively cheaper than the product alternatives. Now, biodiversity, what are the biodiversity found here? One is the Royal Bengal tiger, you have estuarine crocodile, and you have Gangetic dolphin. For tiger, IUCN status is endangered. For dolphin, it is also endangered. For crocodile, you will have to comment and tell us. Okay, there are different types of crocodile. You could say there is gharial, there is saltwater crocodile, and then there is mugger as well. Okay, what is the IUCN status? Please comment and tell us. Core risk: microplastics weaken carbon storage and ecosystem stability. This we have seen before. That means the efficiency of the mangroves will decrease because of an overload of carbon that is sourced from the plastics is being there. Okay, now coming to the next topic, This relates to Kendu leaves and forest rights issue. Okay, this is about a minor forest produce versus the legislation, that is Forest Rights Act of 2006. 2006. It has been 20 years since the Forest Rights Act has been there, and therefore this 20th year is very, very important, and therefore in prelims also you can find a question related to this Forest Rights Act. Now, why in news? First, the tribal Gram Sabhas in Koraput, Odisha, they are unable to use their rights over Kendu leaves for third year. Okay. Understand this, when we talk about the minor forest produce, a lot of tribal communities will depend upon gathering those minor forest produce, processing it, and then selling it in the market. Okay, their livelihood income actually depends upon it. And when it so happens that they are not able to collect it for whatever reasons, and as well as the legislative barriers, you will find that their livelihood income will be affected, and therefore it can become a threat towards threat against the conservation process, or also threat towards the rights that we want to ensure through this legislation. Core issue is rights under Forest Rights Act 2006. It has been blocked by the state control under Odisha Kendu Leaf Control of Trade Act. So this is basically a conflict between a central law and the state subject. That means both center as well as the state have the right to regulate them. Okay. However, you will find that a lot of this will be in conflict. That is, the central law, while it gives the right, you will find that the state law or the state act is there that will actually prevent them from collecting Kendu leaves. Now, ground reality needs state deregulation letter to sell. Okay, that means the state needs to allow these tribal communities, this kind of a letter of deregulation must be there so that they can go and sell it in the market. Okay. At present, ground reality tells us that only 20% households are allowed. That means it is dependent upon a card system. That means whoever has that card has the authority. They can actually go and sell this minor forest produce in the market. Okay, so only 20% of the households. What about that 80%? So that is the problem. That is the issue with this particular topic. So impact, 36 lakh produce has been wasted. Almost 36 lakh rupees. This means this income, this price that was supposed to go towards the tribal communities, because they had gathered all of this minor forest produce and were going to sell it in the market, it was worth 36 lakhs. Now it has been wasted. Okay. So tribal collectors, especially women are excluded. That means when we talk about rights, we also talk about the social justice factor. We talk about the vulnerable sections, especially talking about the women. Okay, so women are the ones that are greatly affected in this situation. Now let us see further. Kendu leaves. You can see so many multiple pictures. It shows how they form a part of the life of the tribal communities. You will see here that they are collecting it, they are processing it, and then they are going for selling it. All right. So let us understand about the Kendu leaves, why it is so important and how is it so central in their lives. What are Kendu leaves? Diospyros melanoxylon. Okay, it is classified as a minor forest produce. When we say it is a minor forest produce, we mean that it can be collected and it can be sold under the Forest Rights Act of 2006. What is the economic role? The economic role is that it is actually called the green gold of Odisha. Green gold of the Odisha, because it is so high in demand. And because it is high in demand, and sometimes when the supply is in scarce, you'll find that the prices of this Kendu leaves will rise. Okay. It is used in which kind of industry? In BD industry. Okay. That is for smoking. Now, key features: hygroscopic. These leaves are hygroscopic. What it means is that they are flexible in rolling. Okay. Seasonal collection, approximately 3 weeks, and major livelihood for the tribal households. What are the major producing states? You might be asked this question. So please note that Madhya Pradesh, adjacent to it, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Maharashtra, and Jharkhand. These are the states that produce in maximum quantities the Kendu leaves. Now let's understand the legal frameworks versus the reality when we talk about the Forest Rights Act. So first of all, legal provision. What does the Forest Right Act of 2006 state? It states that it grants community forest rights. Community forest rights. Apart from this, there is individual forest rights as well. That means you can own a land within the forest area that is up to maximum up to 4 hectares, and you have to provide for documentation that says that your previous 3 generations or your 75 years, your ancestors or your relatives have been living over there. Okay, and this land is not something that is going to be transferable. So another type of act is, another type of right here is stated as community forest rights, and it includes the rights. What are the rights? To collect, to use, and to sell what is stated as minor forest produce. Now within the act you will also find that there is a specific directions of what is classified as a minor forest produce, and therefore it can be collected, used, and sold. But there's a contradiction. There is a contradiction that comes in when we talk about the legislative framework, that Kendu has been nationalized forest produce in some states. That means states will control the trade. Now, it is very important to notice here that even if the central act says and classifies this as a minor forest produce, the state acts can still classify them as a nationalized forest produce. This means the control or the regulation over the trade lies with the state. That means you have to take permission for the state from the state itself to trade in such items. Okay. Now the case with Odisha, is that there is monopoly procurement and the access is restricted via permits and cards. Okay, that means there is only one procurement center, and also whenever it is said that you can collect, use, and sell this MFP, you'll find that it has been restricted that you must possess a permit or you must possess a card so that you can sell it in the market. Okay, that is a particular requirement, and this is because of the result of it being nationalized within the state of Odisha. Now, core insight: this rights, de jure rights, is not equal to de facto control. Okay, that means just because you have these rights, just because you possess these rights, it does not mean that you also have the effective control over the Kendu leaves. Coming forward, why it matters and the key takeaway. So here you have, first, there is livelihood impact. Livelihood impact, because you will see that it is a critical seasonal income for a lot of the tribal communities who are living in these conditions. Okay, that means they are heavily dependent upon this as a source of their income. Second, there are limited alternatives in the forest regions. When we are talking about alternatives, we are saying that what about the minor forest produce? Can't they collect another types of minor forest produce? The thing is, it is already called the green gold of Odisha. It is already something that is very pricey in nature, and therefore the demand is always there in the market. And therefore, they can get good amount if they sell it in the market. As compared to other minor forest produce, the price range is not as much to sustain their lives. Social impact, we talk about particularly the women collectors are the most affected because they seem to be excluded from the permits or the card system. Okay, so this means that they cannot collect, use, and sell minor forest produce without having this card, and mostly you will find that women collectors are on the exclusion side. Exclusion from local economy. Okay, this is another social impact. That means whenever there is economy, whenever there is transactional relationship between two different communities, economic activities will ensure that the two entities are integrated. Okay, whenever this kind of a whenever this kind of nationalization of a product happens, it so happens that there will be disintegration between those two entities. That means they are no longer required to interact or transact with each other. Third is the governance issues. That means there are administrative barriers that override the legal rights. And there is gap between law and implementation. That means whatever the law says, the central act says, and with respect to the rules and regulations that has to be implemented on the ground, it is not something that is intended by the central act, but it is being implemented. Okay, that means there is a gap between the laws, intent of the law, and something that we talk about rules, regulations, that is on ground, what is happening. right? So the intent is that you should have rights. That means the tribal communities and the forest dwellers should have rights. These rights are community forest rights, it is individual forest rights. Community forest rights will include the collection, use and control and selling of minor forest produce. Okay, this is something that was intended to be given, but the rules on ground is something else, right? Now, next, we are talking about biodiversity now. So this is another issue that has come up, and that is related to Umiam Lake. Umiam Lake is in Meghalaya. The state of Meghalaya will find it in the northeast. In the northeast. Okay. So you can see how beautiful this lake is. So you can see that there are considerable number of water sports also, and then there is a dam as well. When we talk about Umiam Lake, it is in news because Meghalaya government has excluded Lumping Dong Island from luxury resort project. So this is in news particularly because we are standing, or the government of Meghalaya is standing at the crossroads of environmental conservation versus developmental activity. Okay, the developmental activity here is water sports, economic activities like tourism activities versus the conservation of the lake itself and the pristine biodiversity that is present here. So reason is there has been protests by environmental and as well as local groups against such kind of activities. The core issue as we have discussed is tourism development versus ecological conservation. Okay. Now let us understand some static facts related to the Umiam Lake. So you have here Umiam Lake, also Barapani or Dam State. Its location is 15 kilometers north of Shillong, Meghalaya. Okay. And how is it formed? It is actually formed a bit artificially when we say that it is formed by damming the Umiam River. Okay. Whenever you want to find a lake, it can be artificial, it can be natural lakes, and whenever you have dams, you will find a lake also because of the river flow that has been stopped. So it is formed by damming the Umiam River. Origin, when was it built? It was built in early 1960s and under Umiam Umtru hydroelectric project. This dam is called Umiam Umtru hydroelectric project. The first reservoir based hydel project in northeast India, so that is why it is quite significant. And stage 1, that is it can create 4 into 9 megawatt since 1965. Now coming to the significance and recent developments. Significance and recent developments. The present role is that it has become a major tourism hub. Okay, major tourism hub, especially with respect to the water sports. A lot of people come here, visit Umiam Lake, and they practice this water sports also. And it is surrounded by East Khasi Hills. When we talk about the map of Meghalaya, it is like Garo Hills, Khasi Hills, and Jayantia Hills. Okay, and here on the Khasi Hills you will have Shillong, and this is near Shillong itself. Shillong is the capital of Meghalaya. Recent developments: DPRs for inland water transport, and it is also linked with the National Waterway 106. This is particularly important. Umgot River is the one here, okay, that we need to remember. So core insight here is that we are going for transition from energy infrastructure. Okay, there is energy infrastructure because this Umiam Lake has been created out of damming the river. Okay, and because of that we are also having hydroelectric project. Okay, we have seen that 4 into 9 megawatts is the energy that can be electricity that can be generated. So energy infrastructure now leading into the tourism and transport economy. Transport economy mainly relating to the inland water transport. That means the transport, the logistics is being connected through the water bodies itself. Okay, because of its less cost as well as the less amount of pollution that it can possibly create. Okay. Now coming to the next issue. That is sighting of multiple apex predators in Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. So first, why it is in news? The news because you have certain number of big cats. Okay. So big cats, three of them: tiger, leopard, and cheetah. Tiger, leopard, and cheetah. They have been sighted together, and this is something that is very surprising in nature. This is because you will find that the habitats of these animals, these big cats, may be different. Okay, and they usually do not dwell together. Okay, it is very rare sighting to find all of them together. And where has it happened? It has happened in Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, and they have been found within 1 to 2 kilometer radius and within the same time window. That means at almost the same time and within 1 to 2 kilometers radius, it is very rare to see them together, right? It is unusual because apex predators, when we talk about apex predators, they are at the top of the food chain and they typically avoid overlap. Okay. The core concept here, this one thing is very important, that there is niche partitioning. Niche partitioning. Okay, what do you mean by niche partitioning? So when we talk about ecological niche, what is ecological niche? It is actually the preference of an organism to carry out its life activities. Preference. Okay, that means where does it reproduce, where does it eat its food, okay, where does it go for any kind of activity. Okay, migration, particularly this is something that is very common with the migratory birds also, migratory animals also, that you will find that in particular season they will migrate to some places. There was an example of olive ridley turtle also that will migrate to the eastern side of coast of Odisha, and there they will lay their eggs. Okay, and it is this kind of a migration takes place only in a particular season. So for the olive ridley turtle, the niche becomes east part or the eastern side of India. Okay, the niche partitioning, what is niche partitioning here then? Niche partitioning means that there has to be different habitat use, there has to be different prey, and there has to be different activity time. Okay, the insight here to understand this is to understand that it is not because they are there, it is not an ecological, it is a temporary ecological coincidence, but not an indicator of stable coexistence. What this is trying to tell you is that it is not talking about the coexistence. That means maybe they have adapted to certain types of conditioning where the niche is overlapping for them. Okay, niche is overlapping for them. That means the habitats, the prey, as well as the activity time has been something that has been overlapping, and therefore they have been using this kind of habitat. Okay, this kind of ecological niche. But in niche partitioning, you will understand that there has to be different habitat use, there has to be different prey, there has to be different activity time. Okay, and this is something that we can classify as a temporary ecological coincidence. It is just a coincidence that they happen to be in the same vicinity. Now, from exam point of view, it is important that you know about all of these species. Okay, first you have tiger. Okay, tiger is the apex predator. It is highly territorial and dominant. That means within its territory, it will try to eliminate any other apex predator. It will try to create a dominance for itself in the food chain as well. Okay, it controls the landscape. It controls the landscape. How do we say? What do we say about the landscape control? Here is a tiger. That means when we talk about a food chain, okay, suppose say there is grass, there is deer, then there is tiger. Okay, and this tiger will be connected to multiple food chains, essentially giving rise to a food web. That means tiger at the top of multiple food chains will ensure that the ecosystem capacity is not exceeded by the overpopulation of other types of species, right? So this means that it will also control the landscape. It will also control the landscape. Second is leopard. Leopard, it is a flexible mesopredator and it avoids tiger. This is important for us to understand. It avoids tiger by becoming nocturnal. What is nocturnal? Nocturnal means that it will only come out in the night time. It will try to avoid the time in which the tiger comes out, and therefore it has to turn nocturnal. That means it has to come out at the night time. It uses rugged terrain. Rugged terrain. As you can see, this is the picture of a leopard who has actually climbed a tree. Okay, that means it has the capacity also to use the rugged terrain. Cheetah, cheetah, diurnal predator, which means that it can hunt both in the daytime as well as the night time. It likes open habitats. Okay, this is very, very important because it relates also to the reintroduction of cheetah program that we have gone forward with, and we have particularly got with us the African cheetahs. Okay, African cheetahs, and the first national park that we have established those cheetahs in, it is the Kuno National Park. Okay, so when we are talking about cheetah and conservation of such, they are saying that open habitats or the ones or the grasslands. Grasslands. So cheetahs will prefer grasslands, and particularly a common knowledge would be that cheetah run at a very, very fast pace, and they are one of the fastest animals. They are actually the fastest, and therefore such kind of open habitats would be conducive for their prey hunting. Okay, so it is speed based hunting. That means they outrun their prey, and that is how they hunt. Okay. Now, exploring this, that why did this overlap happen? Why did this overlap happen? So you will see that likely causes, that means we were stating earlier that this is a temporary ecological coincidence. Temporary ecological coincidence. That means it is not something, it is wrong, it would be wrong to say that they have adapted to same niche conditions. Okay. So first, likely causes prey movement. That means prey movements, the predators will converge. That means when you have a prey, okay, and it moves towards the territory of the other apex predator, then it may be likely that the niche will overlap at that point of time because they will also converge, okay, in chasing that prey. Then there is dispersal dynamics, animals exploring new areas. This is very important. As we have mentioned earlier, there is reintroduction of cheetah program, so it becomes a kind of a curiosity based knowledge that how did this dispersal happen. That means how did the animals actually go out and explore these new areas. Okay, this is particularly in the case of cheetah that we are talking about. Okay, then landscape connectivity. Landscape connectivity, that means movement across habitats, right? It is not like the habitats are very near to each other, and therefore there is need of connectivity. Okay, if there is no connectivity, suppose say there are two types of habitats, habitat 1 and habitat 2. Okay, these are both protected areas, and you will find that if there is no connectivity in between them, then if an animal wants to go to this side, you will find that it will face various kinds of problems. Okay, it may be human wildlife conflict. Okay, it might be the conflict between with respect to the collision with trains. Okay, there might be electrical fences. All of such kind of issues are there. So it is also talking about that the likely causes is that there is landscape connectivity. This connectivity is something that is there, and therefore they are able to reach the other habitats also. They are exploring those new areas, and they are exploring those new habitats as well. Key point here is that it is again a temporary ecological coincidence. It is temporary in nature, and it is not a permanent coexistence. That means it is a chance by which the ecology is overlapping for each other. Okay? Now, understanding Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. Very important, Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. Static facts. It can be asked in your exam also. One, the location. Savai Madhopur, Rajasthan. Please remember this, Savai Madhopur in Rajasthan, and it is between Aravali and Vindhya ranges. Now, Aravali has been in news multiple times, so you should not ignore it. Okay. What are the components? We can see that it is on the eastern part. It is on the eastern part, and the rest of the tiger reserves that are near this, you have Mukundra Hills Tiger Reserve. Okay, you have Sariska Tiger Reserve. you have Savai Madhopur. This is your Ranthambore. This part is Ranthambore. Okay, here you have Ramgarh Vishdhari Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so question can be asked, what are the protected areas in and around the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve? They will give you options, so you will have to choose the right ones. Okay, other three tiger reserves in Rajasthan are Ranthambore Tiger Reserve in Savai Madhopur, Sariska Tiger Reserve in Alwar, and Mukundra Hills Tiger Reserve in Kota. Okay, please remember this. Now components again, Ranthambore, Savai Madhopur, Kela Devi Sanctuary, and it is a part of National Chambal Sanctuary. National Chambal Sanctuary. What are the rivers? Sometimes they will ask you about the rivers also. There was a question about Jim Corbett National Park, and where they asked whether Ram Ganga as a river, whether it flows through the Jim Corbett or not. Okay, so this was the correct answer, and therefore the rivers must also be known that pass through this or are included. Key features: rivers. You will have Banas and Chambal. These are the two rivers that are flowing there. What are the lakes? There is Padam Talab, there is Rajbagh, and then there is Malik Talab. The vegetation here, what is the vegetation? They might ask the vegetation also. You'll find that it is dry deciduous kind of forest, and it makes sense also because the desert area is there. Okay, that means you will have dry deciduous forests. Fauna, again, Royal Bengal tiger, leopard, caracal, deer species, and some birds are found over here. Okay, Rajasthan was also in news for the project Great Indian Bustard, and therefore you should prepare for this thoroughly. Okay, the fact, 71 tigers were there in 2023, and it points to a high density. Okay, when we talk about the population of tigers, it is important that the density of the tigers is also very high, because this points directly to, or it is proportional to, the fact that how much conservation is needed, that is how much biodiversity loss must be prevented, so that conservation is something that is ensured. Okay, now coming to the last part, that is India's 99th Ramsar site. Okay, so it is in UP, Shekha Jheel Bird Sanctuary in UP. It has been designated as India's 99th Ramsar site. Okay, and it is the 12th Ramsar site in the state of Uttar Pradesh. So it is of significance because India is now nearing 100 Ramsar sites milestone, and Uttar Pradesh has 12 Ramsar sites. Core insight is that expansion of wetland recognition. That means when we talk about Ramsar, it is about the Ramsar Convention that was signed in 1971. With respect to India, when it was signed, please comment and mention. But the conservation challenges persist. That means, is it like this that we are just going on naming Ramsar sites one after the other? That is, we are going for wetlands conservation. We are saying that we are going for wetlands conservation, but are the conservation processes actually happening on ground? Okay, or just are we increasing the number of list of wetland sites within our domain? So let us understand the static backbone. So first is Ramsar Convention 1971. Ramsar is a city in Iran where this convention was there. It is an international treaty for wetland conservation and wise use. When we talk about wise use, we talk about sustainable use. Okay, it does not mean that you cannot fish there. Okay, you can utilize its components, but it is only sustainably. That means you should not go overboard. That means you should not overexploit the resources. Also, it is not talking about no use at all. Okay. So India, with respect to India, yes, it was joined in 1982. It is protected under two particular acts. One is the Wetlands Rule 2017, and the second is National Plan for Aquatic Ecosystem. Just to be sure, with our static part, wetlands definition is very wide. When we talk about the Ramsar Convention, they have included almost everything that is waterlogged land. Okay, it is basically it is marshes, fens, ponds. Okay, even the lakes, the sides of the lakes are included within this. Okay, so marsh, fen, peatland, or water, whether it is natural or it is artificial, and they support the biodiversity and the ecosystem services that are provided by the wetlands. Now about the 99th Ramsar site. It is important. Why it is important? First, its location is 15 to 17 km from Aligarh. Aligarh is in UP. Type the freshwater perennial wetland. When we talk about freshwater, we talk about the salinity conditions or how the saline water is. It is linked to Upper Ganga Canal. Biodiversity, 200 plus bird species, migratory species, particularly we can talk about bar-headed goose. Bar-headed goose. In this set, you can find bar-headed goose. This is there. Okay. Then you also have painted stork, and then you have northern pintail. These are the migratory species that are important for Shekha Jheel. Okay. Flyway. Now this is important. Central Asian flyway. Okay. Remember that we talk about convention. We talk about convention on migratory species. That is also known as the Bonn Convention, and it talks about that when animals move out and they are moving out of the political boundaries, then how are we collaborating with different nations to conserve these species? Okay, so you can see here that there is a central Asian highway, especially for the migratory birds. Okay, Ramsar sites prove to be the ones that are important for their niche requirements. Okay, so Central Asian Highway, it talks about connecting various kinds of countries through which these migratory birds will seasonally travel. Okay, and it is important to conserve, it is important to protect and collaborate with different types of countries so that this flyway is not something that is eroded. Now, significance of Ramsar tag. Okay, what is the significance? So you will see here that ecological, it protects the fragile wetland ecosystems, it supports the migratory birds. That means even the wetland ecosystems, whether if it is being degraded, there is no sanctions. However, it places a reputational responsibility on the country that is designating this as a Ramsar site. Second, ecosystem services, that means it goes for groundwater recharge. That means the water will percolate through the soil layers and reach the groundwater table. There will be flood regulation, that means it can absorb more amount of or surplus amount of water that is there. And nutrient cycling, that means it provides for various types of biogeochemical cycles, whether it is nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, or methane cycle. Okay. Economic, it promotes ecotourism. That means because of the migratory birds also, people come here, the bird watchers will come here, and it will also drive various kinds of livelihoods. Climate. With respect to climate, it is very important because wetlands will act as a carbon sink and climate buffers. Okay, carbon sinks meaning that they will store a huge amount of carbon within this ecosystem. The global link that you can state here in the exam is SDGs 6, 13 and 15 and Convention on the Biological Diversity. This was CBD, the convention that India is also a party to, and we have Biological Diversity Act of 2002 in the regard of ratification of CBD. So that was all. Thank you so much.